So welcome back to another episode of Simon Says. We have Lara here.
Hello.
And Lara, we kind of have a group discussion last week, right?
So interesting.
Yeah. And it's like, we kind of want to move into what's happening in Malaysia. But you know what happened with the American election continue to resonate in all parts. Even when we look at some of the local news, like Prime Minister finally back in Malaysia addressing Parliament. But today, I think we want to do just some general questions and answer. And I think some of the questions that we have been seeing people asking, right? So I think one of the big news, I don't know if people even feel it's a big news, is there is finally a huge COVID legal suit. And I was just reading it, and a group of people who they filed a suit and they say they were harmed by forced vaccination, right? That's the word they use. And they were suing the government, Ministry of Health. They were even suing WHO. So anyway, they are suing for 60 million. And interestingly, we were just talking about how the Malaysian Parliament have recently amended the Infectious Control and Disease Act, right? About a month ago, where basically government officials are given more power.
Yes, I mean, especially the enforcement officers. So there's just a lot of discussion that is really going about it. I mean, while they are doing it quite subtly, there is also a lot of discussion as in how much more power should you give to those enforcement officers, especially those who are really like the bureaucrats. I mean, now that you're seeing what is happening in the United States with what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy is doing, Department of Government Efficiency.
Yep.
And here in Malaysia, you are like at the other extreme where you continue to give even more power to the unelected. So I think that's really the whole discussion here. I mean, we're not really like debating the contents of the act itself, but we did mention in this podcast that if PH is in government during
that time.
Exactly. I think the movement control order could possibly be worse.
Yeah, and we talk about movement control, and also the other thing is a vaccine mandate. And now, of course, even in the government, if you recall, a lot of civil servants are kind of pressurized to do, but some didn't. Some refused to give up. Some of the teachers refused to give up, and they were sort of like made to become like pariah like that. They are like just. But we know some of our friends in education departments, they were saying that in Sarawak even, there's a lot of pressuring. But of course, at the end of the day, if you stood strong, nobody could really force you to have that. But we don't really have vaccination mandate in government. I mean, in private sector, not so much, right?
No, but I guess the thing is because of so much pressure and the fear of losing job at the time when there's economic hardship.
Yep.
So a lot of people were kind of been put under the sort of impression where they thought it is quote unquote mandatory when it is not. So I think because of those sort of government pressure that is on all these private sector companies where you literally have to get METI approvals and you have to in order to get METI approvals, you probably need to show 80% of your staff are being vaccinated. So isn't that some form of coercion?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, to the credit of our government, they were not nearly as crazy as some states in US. They were not nearly as crazy as United Kingdom or Australia. I mean, those places, a lot of people, basically, they felt like they had no choice but to take vaccination. Now, of course, with time, with retrospections, we start to see that a lot of people have remorse over taking the vaccine, right? And in fact, the health issue is becoming quite prevalent, and people are kind of openly talking about it that young as in youngish 40-year-old man can just collapse from playing badminton and things like that. It's becoming more and more common.
Yeah, I think the saddest part would be there is a lot of sudden death that is really not attributed to the fact that you get COVID itself. It's really attributed to the fact of the unspoken truth about the efficacy of the vaccine itself or even how experimental it is. So basically, a lot of people at the prime of the age, suddenly just poop.
Actually, when I was reading this news, one of the things that kind of struck to my mind is when you think about COVID and, government is just kind of bringing down the harshest restriction and penalty, and then you talk about some of the people file a lawsuit against their employee, against government for mandate. But when the whole case went to the court, it's very, very similar to the American January 6th case, where basically the judiciary, they do not want to hear about that. And I think when the issue is so huge, the judges are fearful to make decisions. You don't have courageous judges, unfortunately. I'm just seeing a bit of peril here. And, imagine someone is being sacked for don't want to take vaccine, government or otherwise. You go to the Malaysian court. Do you think the Malaysian court will use the common law, use the equity and things like that and say that you have a case?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. So, and this kind of, of course, I'm a lawyer and we always say, look, you can seek justice in a court, but it just shows that there is limitation in that. That if people really, now, of course, I'm interested to see where the legal suit will go, but at the end of the day, it is up to the people to raise the dissatisfactions, to not fold so quickly. And related to this incident, of course, recently Donald Trump named the new NIH director, right?
Yes.
So NIH director, of course, previously Dr. Fauci. So Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. So remember we talked about him, and he's the author of the Great Barrington Declaration, advocating for no lockdown. And that was what Sweden did, right? But anyway, we're not going in depth today, but what's your general feel, about, because so many of the so-called guideline came from FDA, NIH, everyone is looking at Fauci, and again, right? I mean, would it be fair to say the direction of the world, even WHO was like kind of following NIH because they are considered the leader in infectious disease management?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. I think it's really like, during, what was the tagline? As in, like, you follow the science.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, NIH is really like, if suddenly you have some asteroid coming, you have some alien coming, you look at European Space Agency, you look at NASA, you look at those kind of entity, whether they're establishment or not is another matter. So NIH have that sort of standing. So I'm just very interested to see that you have someone who is not for lockdown coming in. Would there be a rewriting or narrative?
No, I think what's interesting is that Jay Bhattacharya, he is someone who is brought in by Trump to, not just, obviously, you do a lot of cleanup and things like that, but also I think another objective is to really restore trust in the public health system.
Yep.
So I think that's important because, if you think about it, it's kind of like oxymoron because, the trust towards public health was so destroyed, especially during those 4 years.
Yep.
And now you have someone who is like being appointed to have to literally just causing an overhaul to the whole system. And yet, how do you do it? In a way, it's kind of like also literally following the science, but it's more like following the facts, the truth. So I think what Anthony Fauci did was really, I think he was literally following the money.
Yeah, because remember a lot of people were showing some of his very old video about vaccine and things like that. He had a very more conservative view. You need years to develop a vaccine. Vaccine doesn't stop transmission, which is just common knowledge. But suddenly vaccine stops transmission. Suddenly vaccine becomes the gold standard for movement control. So all these are, I don't know, but I just felt like the medical industry, me and Lanshi, we always talk about it. It really imploded the last cycle. And I think they will continue to double down and say, look, this Dr. J is from the cultish side. He's on the RFA side. They are the anti-science. But still, I hope they will do something. And hopefully it will have some impact because you can see the media establishments and to a degree the health establishment are trying to push back again, trying to basically delegitimize Trump's appointment and say that these people are just barbarian or not scientific.
I think it's really going to be like a battle between those who are really, really like the innovators, the scientists versus those quote unquote subject matter expert.
Yep.
I mean, here in COVID era, you really see that a lot of the discussions were pushed to, hey, let's just have those subject matter experts giving the opinions. So I think it's really those sort of trust that people need to, and even like discernment that people need to begin to develop. Because I mean, when someone who is supposed to be looking after your health is literally just bowing down and kowtowing to like money.
Yep.
So that's something that we do need to begin to think about. And even in Malaysia here, like I mean in construction industry, what's so interesting is that when we have a government that is so mindful of their face, their performance, and you suddenly have like even very silly sort of regulations where suddenly in the construction you need to have signages that shows Madani.
You mean at the moment?
Seriously. Yeah, I mean,
It's a
because
recent
recently
thing?
we are trying to do some form of application to an ongoing project, and then suddenly the feedback that came in is like, oh, on your signage you need to have like Madani logo and things like that. Well, like
So it's for the council.
yes. So it's like those sort of things. I mean, so I think in Malaysia, I think the danger is really we are also kind of like trying to follow the quote unquote mainstream, and you end up, I think if we're not careful, we could also go towards the trail of what Anthony Fauci did and really like just following the money, and you're kind of like just part of the system, although the so-called reformation is like trying to be in place. So I think you were really not seeing a reformation, but you're really just seeing like, hey, let's just make the government bigger and bigger.
Okay, so let's look at another issue. And I mean, Prime Minister finally back after a long worldwide tour, right? I mean, there was some controversy about, the cost of flights and things like that. But people kind of forgotten about it. Do you think it's an issue? Do you think our Prime Minister is traveling too much?
Actually, I thought it was, well, maybe he should have like, I don't know. I mean, I felt like maybe this is also a time where Malaysia do really, really need to be very careful of the allies that they have, and really just trying to be, basically just, like with US being a superpower once again. I mean, they have always been a superpower, but because it's just that over the last 4 years, they were a bit weaker. I think this is the part where Malaysia do need to be very, very careful where they align. Because I mean, we have been very vocal about being, hey, we want to like join BRICS. We are also like not recognizing US sanctions. So those sort of things, I'm not sure if that will be very, very helpful to Malaysia, especially on one hand, you're trying to like establish that sort of great foreign relations. And on the other hand, you're like kind of like sabotaging this whole relationships.
Yeah, I mean, remember the last episode, David Tiang was just saying that, countries like Malaysia, we can't afford to be overly on one side, Of course, is BRIC even aside, of course, America is one of the largest trading partners. I mean, China is a very important trading partner, but where is the balance? Where do you stand? But of course, Prime Minister in Parliament kind of mentioned, I think that one of the articles just yesterday or the day before, I think in FMT, right, it said that Prime Minister dismisses fear of US sanction. And I mean, the fact you had to say that, it must mean that you have been thinking about US sanctions. Now, to be clear, there are US sanctions on individual companies that have breached sanction for one way or another. Now, all the people who kind of rally around BRICS, they are basically not happy with the dominance of US dollar and they want an alternative. I mean, from that point of view, I can agree with that. But remember, we talked about some episodes here that, prime ministers, I mean, I'm not even sure that what he does it even represent the government, but it's like it's almost like a personal mission like that in terms of the Palestine, Hamas kind of thing. And I mean, we look at a lot of other Muslim countries like Emirates, like Indonesia. Yeah, most of them are very supportive of the Palestine cause, but not many kind of is like edges so closely to even saying like Hamas is correct. I mean, of course, to be fair, Prime Minister have not said anything like that, but just felt ever so close that he was endorsing Hamas. Did you get that feeling from time to time?
Yeah, of course. I mean, he is just
Now he's hosting them. He met with them, and then he and Erdogan, and remember we were just having that discussion the other day, and I made this comment. I say I'm not sure our prime minister should be engaging in activities where he does not have political capital. So here in Malaysia, people are not happy. People are not happy with the overt support for Palestine already because you have so many domestic issues. But you will really be crossing the line when you are supporting Hamas. But he hasn't done that, but he seems to want to do that, right?
I think he has the tendency to tread on very dangerous territory. It's like testing the waters, not just with Malaysians generally. I think it's also like really testing the boundaries. I think it's almost like he's trying to test out his philosophy, like of advancing certain cause. And I felt like that cause does not represent the whole of Malaysia. It's just representing a certain group, and maybe even the group that he was fighting so much for may not really be so supportive after all. I mean, at all these sort of
and
costs.
we see some of the Malay people and even some, recently you can see a lot of issue when you look at the Malay KOL, and they are, like for example, recent signage issue, right? And they were saying that, look, if you have the non-Muslims selling pork, do you really want to put Barbie there? It's like nobody wants to do that. You need some common sense, and which leads me to just one article today published. I think Bridget Welsh, in her opinion, again talking about the US election, the lessons learned. But I think she kind of, before the US election, she had another article where she talked about how Prime Minister kept on pandering to a group of people that doesn't seem to want to support him. So do you think like Prime Minister is, like, you make a very interesting point that he was trying to test out his philosophy, but isn't Politic 101 all about, what does your base want, and are you going to fulfill the promise? I mean, that's what Trump has been doing.
I feel like the main difference between him, our Prime Minister, and Donald Trump would be, one, the former is being more philosophical, and the later is actually being more dogmatic and practical, and literally just what resolves the problem. Because I think we are really at the time where if people are suffering, and how do you make Malaysia great again? I mean, it's not true philosophy, I mean, we don't win battle on paper only, and when everyone is like starving. So, but Donald Trump is literally just like, okay, let's just put the right fit into those places where it will fix a lot of issues. So I mean, a lot of his appointments are like causing a lot of controversy, in the leftists, and you have like MSNBC that is like breaking down over and over. It's like even the rating is like plummeting. So I think that shows that he's actually hitting the mark. Whereas I think our Prime Minister, he is, I mean, not to say that we're like criticizing him, but I think like 2 years is really enough time for you to just like test out your theory. And if things don't work out over the last 2 years, maybe it's time to change course, I mean, you don't just continue doing certain things and hoping that your theory might work. So I think that's really, I don't know. I mean, he should sack his advisors, man.
Actually, very interesting here listening from you, and kind of, I was just trying to find the right term to describe Prime Minister, because remember they just celebrated 2 years of Madani, and remember David Tian sent us the brochure and things like that. It's just, suddenly I was reminded, it's just very, very similar to how the Democrats in America work, especially Barack Obama. There's a term people use, and they call him a philosopher king. And suddenly it comes to me that it's like when Donald Trump speaks very plainly, people say that he is very clumsy, he is not eloquent, because he speaks the people's language. And whereas you have the establishment, you have the political elite, they'll use all the political jargon, try to sound like very smart. But this kind of thing, did you feel like, I mean, especially in light of the last American election, is slowly being rejected by people because they could sense the fakeness?
Most definitely. I think they really, really wanted, what people do want is that sort of genuine expression from you that, hey, I can come down to your level to really just understand you, understand the struggle. I mean, even like Donald Trump going to McDonald's, I mean, that's just so interesting. I mean, driving a garbage truck. I mean, all those sort of things are something that I don't think you'll ever see our prime minister doing that.
And you can see, and people don't find it fake. That's what Jared was saying in the last episode, right? When you do it, people can tell if you're authentic or if you're like Jennifer Lopez, which is just totally fake and being paid to do the job. So a lot of the celebrities, unfortunately, when they try to endorse Kamala, it felt like it's a paid job, and they can't even do a proper acting. Some of them. So, but anyway, now if you miss that episode, do listen to our 4-person kind of group discussion, which is very interesting.
Yes.
Now let's talk about some economic kind of thing, because I remember a few episodes ago, during the whole campaign trail, we talked about Trump used, he said the most beautiful English word.
The T word.
Tariff, right? And so it's very interesting that I was talking tariff with some of my friends. Now I'm in a SME kind of company, and people generally have a very favorable view of China, Malaysia. A lot of the SME, SMI, especially the Chinese businessmen, they have a certain point of view about. Now they may be aware of what's happening in America, but normally they're more China-centric. So, of course, coming from that perspective, tariff is like a very, very poisonous word, right? But I want to quickly talk about tariff now. Of course, Malaysia not really affected by tariff. But remember one of Trump's social media posting, the first one about tariff, and he wasn't even aiming at China so directly. He's talking about Canada and Mexico, right? And he said he's going to impose 25% tariff on each of them and 10% additional tariff on China on top of everything else. Now he is talking about if they do not put a stop to the importing and movement of fentanyl and all those things that... Now, by the way, do you know fentanyl is almost like a top 5 killer for Americans, because it is like so many times stronger than pure coke. But anyway, let's talk about tariff, right? And have you talked to people about tariff? And like what's a general feel? I mean, we're not economists and things like that, but surely people talk about that, right?
Yeah, I mean the sort of question would be like, how dare he? I mean that's just like basic, the most obvious sort of question that I usually get. But the thing is, it's interesting because what he did was, especially to the neighboring countries, literally these two are like Canada and Mexico couldn't be nearer to United States. And yet what he did was, because, I mean, if we could just go back to the two main mandate that he said, I mean, one is to close the border, and two is that drill, baby, drill. I mean, obviously he has a very keen interest to make the economy great again. But really, I think his first agenda was really to close the border, and by imposing this sort of tariff on them, what he did was essentially creating like a sort of effective economic barrier, so that, hey, Mexico, you resolve this issue, illegal migrants, before I even come in to like literally finish the war. So what he did was so interesting, because I mean, you also have like the Mexican president, I think. She was just like, he mentioned that they had a good chat, and then she was like very committed to literally just resolve this. I mean, what he was just basically saying, Mexico, you resolve your own cartel issue, and we will work things out. So I think because it's not like it's forever and ever sort of tariff until you resolve the issue and let's talk again.
Yeah, and I think if people... Now, of course, some of us are not really that interested in economy and things like that. But for people who really want to understand Trump's economy, the MAGA's economy, I think one of the good source will be Breitbart, because Breitbart economy editor John Carney is really an expert in Trump's economic. And in fact, he has a very close relationship with the new Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. And which is very interesting, because Bessent is from the same fund manager with Soros and things like that. I don't know about Malaysia. Malaysians still remember Soros maybe from Mahathir's time, right? Currency manipulation and things like that. But of course, Soros, in Europe, they say Soros was a very respected figure, because he does not the political things, he only do it in US, he doesn't do it in Europe and things. But he is first and foremost a successful trader. And but anyway, coming back to the whole tariff kind of thing, I mean, I would say people shouldn't look at it as the final objective. That's why I was reading one article from South China Morning Post. Of course, South China Morning Post, they of course they will have a more China-centric perspective, but the head office is Hong Kong, so they are like maybe still have a bit of independent editorial. And they make a very interesting article and say, well, even with tariff, you will not be able to restore American manufacturing. And I think, you see, I think people think that all Trump wants to do is to bring back manufacturing to US, but that's not his only goal. You see, like with this tariff, he is able to achieve border control. With tariff, he's able to force, for example, NATO nations to pay out what is due. With tariff, he's able to say, we don't want to be in Paris Agreement, we don't want to be in WHO. So it's really a tool for a better deal. And he already got a better deal. Trudeau also called him and say, oh, well, we'll do the thing. Because you see, that's what John Carney from Breitbart was saying. All these nations, at this moment of time, America is still the biggest market. I think this is a reality that we have to face up. The last few years, you have seen China try to kind of push out Hollywood, try to push out Starbucks, all these kind of things that they're trying to say we rely on internal market. Yes, I definitely believe China can survive as a whole, but if you want to be dominant at world stage, you have to be able to say that you are the world biggest market. China is the world biggest exporter, not importer.
True.
So it's okay, if you have that kind of ambition, you should go for it, but you can't continue to operate on trade surplus. So I think that is what Trump is saying. Look, you can't do that. But anyway, I mean, I like to, every time there is an opportunity for discussion on tariff, I want to kind of, present it in a way for people to understand. It is not just about China or things like that. It's about how the administration can enforce their policy. And America can still do that because they are still the world biggest market for now. So now, of course, it's like we are also very reliant on export, petroleum, our palm oil. And you see sometimes you hear some of our local businessmen, they get very triggered and they say the West tries to stop us, use human resource labor law and say we cannot export the palm oil. People get very triggered very easily. But every nation just want to look after their own, right?
Yep.
And I think that's why I like what Zafrul was saying. Zafrul tried to, Tengku Zafrul, he is saying that, look, there is an opportunity here. Try to look from a more positive point. Yeah, maybe privately you disagree, you can have that, but you don't need to come out and agitate the superpowers, right? You don't want to agitate China, you don't want to agitate the states. But I felt like, PMS is agitating.
He is not a disruptor.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, tariff is like, people, of course, we're not economists and things like that, but I just find it will be very, very interesting. And I mean, I don't think we'll see an economic rearrangement like Argentina. Javier Milei is like, what he calls himself, anarcho-capitalist, with the, like I was just reading the other day.
Chainsaw.
After he won, they call him what, El Capo, right? Something like that, which basically translated to madman. So the media in Argentina and Latin America call him a madman. And I think with his strict inflation control mechanism, his rating is still high. And people are saying that we need a chainsaw to do it. So I don't know, okay, to be fair to our government, I think one of the things they have done correct is the removal of subsidy, but it's the subsequent thing that is causing a lot of agitation, right? Is that like, because you say you remove subsidy and then you want to give cash out and things like that. I mean, do you have any perspective on this? And I think we're going to kind of close with this already.
Well, I felt like it's a bit half-hearted. As in, like, the whole thing is not done in a very sincere manner. As in,
it's like they want to do it and they don't want to do it.
I guess it's like they are still trying to appease to a larger group of people who are probably in the B40
Okay,
categories.
one question first. Do you think our economy can survive with removal of subsidy without cash back?
I think if we don't bloat out our government departments and things like
So
that.
you have to reduce expenses
Yes.
elsewhere. But that's another super painful thing to do.
I mean, I would rather that they cut subsidy, but also at the same time showing that we are also doing our best to improve government efficiency, and hence your tax money is well spent, and we're not like increasing even more tax
we need our
collection
own
and things like
DOGE.
that. Yes, so I think that might work, but I mean, obviously, it's not going to be pain.
Is pure cutting too extreme?
Yeah, probably so.
But we are beyond that already, right? I mean, yeah. Now of course, to be fair, Raw 95 they can always delay, because that would be the big deal, you know. When that happens, like everyone will just say, well, I need to increase everything by 50 cents or 1%. You see the rolling effect. It could be irreversible, and you can see some hesitancy there, right?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. I think, but I guess one interesting model that Malaysia could definitely study is like El Salvador, because what they did was also pretty much very, very drastic. I mean, with what the president did. But what he did was basically he resolved the societal issue first, like basically a lot of crime issues. So I think in Malaysia, we do need to look at what's the main issue that is causing the reliance of people on subsidy, and even like a lot of handouts and things like that. So that, I mean, you're not trying to get like political cookies, you know, like points, but rather you're just trying to help people. I think with that sort of measure, I mean, even with what Javier Milei is doing, I think Malaysia could probably head towards the other direction. So better than like now here, we're like neither here or there, I felt.
Our bloated administrations, just economy basically controlled by GLC and things like that. And I mean, this is like 30, 40 years legacy. Not easy to remove, but so far, after 2 years of the Madani government, we have not seen. I mean, the subsidy is the biggest thing they want to do, but yet they don't seem to want to cut in other areas. They increase the civil service some more and things like that. But and you have the biggest budget ever. So now we're saying this because one of the concern, of course, and I think it's the last point already, is remember one of Trump's motto, right? Drill, baby, drill. So if he really begin to open more field and things like that, the crude oil is expected to drop. And that will have a big impact on Malaysia, right? So, I mean, to end with this, and I think the next few episodes we want to talk about it, coming back again, because remember now there is also the tussle over natural gas with Sarawak and things like that. And, you know, Sarawak also want to have their own Sarawak petroleum. But it just kind of felt like everyone just want a slice of the pie. But I think unless you become transparent, right? Why don't you show what Petronas is actually performing? What is so secret about that? I mean, this is our number one revenue. Surely it should be a public record. Don't you think so?
Declassified.
Yeah. And I think the only reason why you don't have the public accounting of Petronas is because Petronas has been the personal wallet for the elite and government. But anyway, I think our Q&A just kind of lead to more Q&A, right? So maybe in the next few episodes, we want to talk kind of come back to focus. But we can't really, you know, the big elephant in the room, Donald Trump is going to be president for the next 4 years. It's going to continue to dominate a lot of discussion. But I'm really interested to talk about petroleum, you know, what happened when crude oil is down. But what are you looking forward to discuss in the next few episodes?
Well, I guess it's really the sort of things that I think maybe we could even talk about how our prime minister becomes who he is today. I felt like it will be interesting to kind of like look at his journey to really
From
like just
and all these things.
Yeah, just sort of like understand why he's like so passionate about certain cause, and because a lot of people have high hopes from him, and I think he still has that window of opportunity to actually turn around and really possibly even overcame the legacy of his master. Literally.
or his role is really to create hardship. Because David Tian said the other day, right, like with Trump and things like that, one of the perspective is 4 years of hardship allows, imagine if Trump had won in 2020, it will be a totally different administration now. So sometimes you need that. But of course, it sounded very bad, right, for a politician to come in and to destroy the country so the country will wake up. I surely don't want our PMS to be in that category, but it could be a role that he's playing.
Possibly.
All right, so I think times is out, but all these things and more to come in a future episode. So hopefully we'll get more different perspective and guests to come here.
Yes, that
Have a
would be
chat.
very fun.
All right, that's it for now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.